Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into an exciting topic about rhythm in photography. Just like in music, rhythm in photography can create a sense of movement and harmony in your images. We're going to explore 3 key components that will help you to start noticing and being able to capture these wonderful moments in your life utilizing the idea of rhythm. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Well, first of all, what is rhythm? Rhythm does not exist as a singular element. It always requires multiplicity. For most people, when we talk about rhythm, the first thing that comes to mind has to do with music. And just like at the beginning of this video with a quote by romantic composer Henry Herz, remarking that rhythm is a universal law. Imagine being the first human to strike something out in nature and by repetition and synchronization and found this abstract idea of harmony that it really can stir up our emotions. That moment is probably super profound to human history, and it's almost addictive to try to recreate it every single time. Psychologists believe in a theory that because our first experience with sound is dominated by the mother's heartbeat, we, as all humans do, innately associate rhythm with a sense of security. And so yes, it is inherently in us when we breathe, when we walk, when we sleep, and when we create. Rhythm in photography is the repetition and alteration of elements which guides the viewer's eye through your image. It can create a sense of movement, flow, and structure. Think of it as the heartbeat that guides the viewers through your visual story. And here are the main tips that I want to guide you through to grapple with this idea of rhythm and make use of it in your photography. Tip number 1 is pattern. When you capture pattern, you evoke a sense of order and balance. The viewer will feel calm because there is no big surprises within the image. But at the same time, they may feel a little bit lost in space because there might not be a subject to focus on because everything looks very much the same. So when you try to capture pattern, what do you look for? Look for repetition within the elements of the window, the architectural facade, within nature, the patterns of the leaf, the row of plants that's planted. All these things can become interesting in your image. Another tip when you're trying to capture pattern is to fill the frame with that pattern. When you see something that's repetitive and is interesting, try to fill the whole frame with it. And so get closer, make sure you look at the edges of the frame, and if there's any kind of distraction protruding out, disturbing that particular repetition, try to, eliminate that and adjust your composition accordingly. I've actually made an entire video about this topic of pattern. So if you're interested particularly on this and want to dig deeper, I'll leave a link in the description where you can click and find out more. Next, let's talk about progression. This is when things start to become more interesting. Progression refers to repeated elements that gradually change in a predictable way. Think of this like a line of trees decreasing in size or a spectrum of color. Even though this is still repetitive and predictable, the introduction of change really can make a big difference and excite creators, artists, and musicians alike. When you're trying to capture progression, look for these 3 things. Identify gradual change. These could be the change of sizes, shapes, and colors. Secondly, look for leading lines. Leading lines can guide your viewer's eye through a progressive path. Thirdly, play with perspectives. When you change your perspective to the side, to the top, to the bottom, you will immediately see gradual change because of how things will diminish over space and distance. And finally, we have intervals. This involves the spacing between elements, creating a rhythm through gaps and pauses. Intervals can go both ways. Depending on the spacing, it can convey both calmness or tension. Think of these as breathers within a conversation. When somebody is speaking really fast and there's just no pauses and you don't even think they actually breathe, or people actually speak slowly and there are moments where you can think and reflect and also respond, or even sometimes someone else might jump into the conversation and it just breaks the rhythm. Intervals play such an important role in any kind of art form, just like music when it's dealing with duration. Just like filmmaking, when you're editing a video, you think so much about how to transition from one thing to the climax. That pause becomes so important that it's almost like an active act and not a passive thing to do. Massive ancient wisdom from the Bible, where God used 6 days to create everything on the earth, from animals to Adam and Eve. He rested on the 7th day, did nothing. And so it's just like when we work all the week and rest on the weekends, and particularly on Sunday, it's called the Sabbath day, and we just do nothing, prepare for the next big challenge. And it's not so much passive. That pause is almost as if it was planned, an active act of nothingness. When capturing intervals in photography, try to look for these two things: varying spacings. So experiment with different distances with your subject. Secondly, subject placement. Consider placing your subject at the interval and not at the beat. When you're talking about golden ratio, all these kind of things, when you see certain repetition of elements, you can place the subject not where the positive is, but where the negative is. See how that makes a difference. For those of you who might be new to my video, I always like to add a +1 tip to the main 3 components that explains a particular concept. And that is because this is where things get interesting. And for the +1 tip for rhythm, I would like to say is to break the pattern. So sometimes introducing an element that breaks the pattern can add interest and focus. Harmony is always attractive in a piece of music or to the human eye, to our human body, that we naturally respond to heartbeat and all that. It naturally draws us in. However, do not underestimate dissonance or the play of syncopation within music or within a beat and repetition, where something disturbs a pattern or something that just appears to be irregular, but it actually is repeating itself, such as a syncopated piece of music. And so sometimes the change from a pattern to a progressive pattern in your composition is just not enough. So to provoke more emotional reaction or to create some sort of visual surprises, what I love to do is to introduce visual interruptions. And it's almost like a wake-up call suddenly that you're asleep in this pattern, this calmness, this kind of gradual progression that is so predictable, but suddenly that is just unpredictable happening that wakes you up. So this could be your main subject in the photograph or just a non-important element that breaks up the pattern within your frame. I want to also throw in a take-home tip for you, and it literally means something that you can take home and try right away, whether you are at a certain level that you think you're not good enough and all that. There is no good and bad or high or low. If you are a practicing photographer, you can try these things out. And the take-home tip for today is perfection versus imperfection, and being aware of which side are you on. How much of a change have you introduced into your image or composition? How much of a change have you done in terms of changing your camera angle? Is it enough to show that you have changed from a perfect, super balanced composition to something that's more dynamic? Or you're still just shooting somewhere in between? Because the worst thing is people don't feel your intention about your composition. When your composition doesn't feel intentional, it becomes weak. It doesn't communicate what the photographer is trying to share. And so just be intentional with your composition, whether it's a perfectly balanced rhythm or something that is just imperfect, where you're trying to create some sort of dynamism, progression into your photograph using rhythm. Try to avoid tiny differences when you change your composition, when you change your camera angle or framing, but make it intentional. Make it clear that you are actually trying to shoot from the side and not from straight on. This will only reduce the confusion of the viewer and really understand your intention of what you're trying to capture. So there you go. To wrap up, rhythm in photography is all about guiding the viewer's eyes and evoking emotions through repetition and spacing. Notice all the things around you when you capture and start to look for patterns, notice any progressions, and play with intervals and spacing. These techniques will help you to create dynamic and compelling images. If you found this tutorial helpful, help me out with a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and share to that friend who is just dying for more photography tips. Leave a comment down below, let me know how you incorporate rhythm into your photography. Tag me on Instagram at gabrielleung.jpg so that I can see your work. There's a free Lightroom presets pack down in the description if you want to download. I do a lot more videos just like this one about other concepts. You can find the playlist in visual language and photography. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.